Howdy cowboys! Today I'm gonna show you the best treasure map farming method for PlayStation players. This is the fastest and easiest method out there, hands down. Plus I'll show you a brand new trick that doesn't require closing the game or disconnecting your internet. So let's get started.
Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang.
It's the Archive Boy. All about Wild West and pain. And if you want to know more about this game, join the Temptas gang.
Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang.
First thing, you must be in a solo lobby, created by changing your MTU settings. Other solo methods won't work for this. Next, head to this spot, just north of Blackwater. Your goal is to place your camp right here. While placing your camp, make sure you're facing in the direction of the camp. Choose the Heartlands location. If done correctly, your camp will spawn right away in the right place. If not, keep trying until it does. Now open the main menu, go to Online and select Camp. Once you load into camp, check your map. If there is a side mission nearby, the treasure map will not appear on the tree. In that case, just change the session again, go to Online and camp. Don't worry, I'll explain all the rules at the end of the video. If the map is clear, you're good to go. Head to the tree. Boom, here is your treasure map. It will always spawn here, as long as Madame Nazar isn't too close, and you are not in cooldown. A lot of folks have asked me in the comments why I don't show the exact tree location. So here it is now, marked clearly on the map. Now for the veteran players, here is the exciting part. I found a way to farm without closing the game or disconnecting the internet. Super useful for streamers like me when I don't have a capture card. You can continue streaming without losing connection to the game. I have all the maps, so the map name won't appear for me. After grabbing the map from the tree, open the interaction menu, left on the D-pad. Scroll down to Story Mission on Call and wait for the treasure map name to appear. As soon as it shows, select the mission. You'll see a loading screen. Then an error. Just hit OK. Now select your camp again and repeat the process. Check the map. Right to the tree. Grab the map. and start story mission on call. That's how you farm treasure maps, fast and easy. Now, here are the golden rules of treasure farming. Only launch story mission on call after collecting the treasure map. In all other cases, just switch sessions through online and camp. If some side mission is active nearby, the map won't appear. Legendary animals count as active missions. If Madame Nazar is close to your farming location, the map won't spawn. If you followed all the rules and the map still doesn't spawn, that means you've hit a cooldown. You won't see another map for the next 72 real-life hours. And if you're interested in more treasure map or gold bar farming tricks, just click on the picture.